My name is Christina Harrison, and I am a women, gender, and sexuality studies major. For my senior thesis, I have worked under Dr. Whitney Womack, although a lot of these professors have helped me to come to the place where I can understand issues of power and privilege, which is what I'm going to talk about here. Under the Wig and In Heels, Still a Man's World, that's a very interesting title. What I am talking about is drag. What is drag? Drag is typically seen as a person who is performing the opposite gender, although that is not true. There's a lot of problems with saying opposite and also trying to assign gender, and considering that there are lots of people who identify as trans and they perform as their own gender. And I want to point out that yes, it falls under the trans umbrella, but it is distinct from other trans identities. Drag queens and kings are always associated with performance. If you ever get confused between cross-dressers and people who do drag, remember that drag is for performance. Here is an example of some drag. I here have a drag queen, which is a cisgender male, and I thank Christine for kind of starting so I don't have to explain all that. And then the cisgender male who performs as a female. The middle is me, that's why they're so good looking, and I am a cisgender woman who performs as a male on stage. The third one is what we call a bio queen. I have a lot of problems with that name. However, that is what it is widely known here in contemporary culture. And so that is a cisgender woman performing as a drag queen, okay? What I'm really here to talk about, though, is the ways in which drag culture within the GLBTQ community, which drag culture is huge within the GLBTQ community, models the same patriarchy, inequality, and oppression of women, with cisgender men at the top of the heap. The glass ceiling, we've heard many times in society. We've heard it, in news articles, and feminist theorists have talked about this for a long time. It is the unseen yet unbreachable barrier that keeps minorities and women from rising to the upper rungs of the corporate ladder, regardless of their qualifications or achievements. You wouldn't think that a culture that is actually kind of bending gender would have a glass ceiling, but it does. This is the conundrum. Drag is the constructing and deconstruction of gender performance. However, many people, if you even knew what drag was when you walked into this room, probably thought of RuPaul. RuPaul is a cisgender male who performs as a woman. If you've seen anything in the media lately, there's a lot of problems using all kinds of cis-sexist language. And my studies, though, have primarily been on cisgender women in drag. Although there's certainly cis-sexism and transphobia within the drag community, my area of study has been more along the lines of the cisgender women. The idea in drag is that if you are a cisgender woman, that you should be performing as a drag king, which means that you should be performing like I do, with a beard, with your breasts taped down, and you should be putting on the male persona. Because in drag culture, they consider a lot of times it to be a switch to the, again, opposite gender. However, we learned at the beginning, drag is actually about performance, and for the performance of gender. And if by saying that you have to switch your gender to perform, not only are you leaving out trans-identified people, but you're also really tearing down the thing that you're trying to do, which is to actually complicate these issues, right? So there's a lot of transformation in performance, whether you are a cisgender female or not. For example, when we go back to this picture, the bio queen, she's a lovely lady, but she is not usually that skinny. She is corseted to death. She has on a very expensive wig, about $100 each wig. She's got on her different outfit, and if you notice, that is performance. It would be very difficult, and I would challenge you to tell me, if I didn't tell you which one was the drag queen versus which one was the bio queen, what the difference was. This is where the inequality and the oppression comes in. I have had the opportunity to work in the drag community both for charity, but also as a paid performer. The ISQCCBE, which is the Imperial Sovereign Queen City Court of the Buckeye Empire, is an absolutely wonderful organization. In the course of the 23 years that we've been in existence, we have raised over $1 million for local charities.
Woo.
That's awesome. However, the problem is that in that 23 years, the two people that you see here, that's the Empress and the Emperor, they are the fundraiser chairs. They are the figureheads of the organization. The one on the left is Frida Bangkok, our current Empress. That is a cisgender fireman who performs as a female. The one on the right is also a cisgender male who just performs as himself. In the 23 years that the ISQCCBE has been here in Cincinnati, not once have they had a cisgender or trans woman as the emperor or empress, either one. Also, when we talk about bookings and paid gigs, there are about 5 local bars between Cincinnati and Butler County that consistently have drag performances. Out of that, there's usually about 4 performers per show. That's about 20 openings per gig, right? In a day at one of these bars. Rarely does a drag king or a bio queen get booked in these positions. And if they do, it is almost never on a Friday and Saturday night where they're actually able to make money. When we talk about competitions and pageants and titles, cisgender women are not able or allowed to run for RuPaul Drag Race. They would not be able to try out. I actually have a drag king friend named Landon Sider. He is incredible. And he performs in California, but he tries out every year, even though he knows that he's not going to get accepted. And they're not able to compete alongside drag queens. They put them in a completely different arena where the crowds are smaller, there's less people competing, there's less visibility, and it's like I said, it's completely different. You cannot compete alongside drag queens in the most part. The ISQCCBE does allow biological or cisgender women to perform as well as to compete in some of these pageants, depending on what the pageant is. The worst thing that actually happens is there is verbal abuse and threats of violence for cisgender women in drag. The bio queen that I showed you a picture of earlier has actually been on stage, and I'm in the background, and I've had a cisgender male, gay male, come to me and say, "What, she's a woman?" Yes, she's a cisgender woman. Oh, she's a cheater. What? When she comes out here, I am going to pull her wig off, which in the drag community is absolutely the worst thing that you could possibly do to a drag queen. And he really does have a physical threat against the biological woman that is performing. So, what is my point? Even in a culture that purports to celebrate and complicate gender, that even hyperbolizes and is recognized for hyperbolizing and celebrating femininity, women are still bumping those wigs up against the glass ceiling. Thank you.
Woo!